Okay, we're recording.
Welcome to the March 18th, 2026 Finance Subcommittee of the Brookline School Committee. We have a packed agenda today. Before I begin, I want to make a couple quick opening remarks. This meeting has been also publicly noticed as a meeting of the full school committee, which permits all members to participate in the discussion and the deliberation. However, at this point, while we have a quorum of subcommittee members present, we do not yet have a quorum of full school committee members present, and we will announce once we get that quorum so that those members can participate. And as chair of the subcommittee, I will be leading today's meeting. And so we are going to start with the first item on the agenda, which is minutes, but then we're going to rearrange some things because there are other overlapping events tonight that people need to get to. So we're going to try and make sure that everyone can get where they need to go when they need to get there. So the first item on the agenda is approval of minutes from the January 14th, 2026, January 20th, 2026, and February 4th, 2026 Finance and Capital Projects Subcommittee meetings. Do I have a motion for approval?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Donna. And how do you vote? If there's no comments, how do you vote? Sarah?
Yes.
Donna?
Yes.
And I vote yes. So that is the first item. The next thing we're going to go to is review of where is it in the agenda? So I get it right. Review of the two grant applications. The first one is FY27 Civics Teaching and Learning Grant application to DESE for $90,000. Betsy, do we need to approve these separately? They're listed in the agenda separately. I can't remember how we do this.
We don't have to, but I think it's up to the subcommittee.
Okay, well, we can talk about them separately.
Okay.
So the first one is civics teaching and learning. There was some material provided to us in the background, which is overviewing what the project, what this year's proposal would be. And then the second one is for $120,000 for genocide education, also to DESE. And there is some backup material. Donna, I know you had some questions and comments. Are you available now to make them, or do you want to, or do you need another minute to get settled in?
No, I'm happy to discuss now if it's most appropriate.
Yep.
Okay, so
Before you do, I'm going to make a motion for approval, and we'll wait for a second, and then we'll open up the conversation.
I second.
Okay, go ahead, Donna.
Oh, thanks so much, Mariah. First and foremost, I want to say thank you to Greg and Jen for being here and making yourselves available. I had sent a list of questions as soon as we received the grant proposals for review, and I understand that the timing that we have a packed agenda and there is not a lot of essentially like not a lot of time to turn around and provide responses. So I do have questions about how the materials for both of the grants are being vetted, what specific framework is used to evaluate the materials and instruction, particularly around the genocide grant, because my understanding is, if I'm remembering correctly, there were requests by at least one member of school committee to view the materials, and I'm not sure that they have been provided yet. I also think we have a very painful history in our district, and specifically at the high school. Anthony referenced that as well when he was presenting at WIS, which makes some of these questions even more important to me personally, but I think important as a whole in our conversations about what rubrics are being used, how the instructional materials are evaluated and determined to be balanced and quote equitable. What is the mechanism by which parents, students, or educators can provide feedback or concerns? There was an issue I want to say a couple of months ago, where I was contacted as a school committee member about some concerns around our unit that was developed, and I had more. For me, I zoomed out on those questions because that's more appropriate, and I haven't heard back on that yet. I also would be interested in, I do feel like some of the materials are offering more of a single interpretive lens, and I'd be interested in understanding the multiple viewpoints that might be used to have some of these important discussions. I think I'm going to stop there, but I'll say I think I'm going to stop there for now.
Before
Thank
you
you.
reply, Jen, assuming you want to, I just want to put a pin in this moment that we are in finance, and I think a lot of these questions are not really finance questions, but I wanted to make sure Donna had the moment, she had questions, and I wanted to make sure that they were brought up in the same way they have been in the past and haven't been responded to, at least that I know of. And we've had discussions of having a presentation about the genocide education activities, and I don't think that's happened either. So again, this is the finance conversation, but I think that I wanted to make sure she had space to raise her concerns. So with that, go ahead, Jen, if you want to reply.
Yeah, I mean, I think, I don't know about Greg, but I did not receive an email with any questions. So just to Donna, I'm so sorry. I would have loved to have pre-answered them for you, which I would normally do, but I have not received any email with any questions. So I don't know if it was just a matter of not hitting send. So I apologize for that, because I don't have any context for what the comments that were just made. I'm also not sure, Donna, because it's both Greg and I, which curriculum we're talking about. I have never received a request to see any of the materials related to the genocide grant, but maybe Greg has and he can speak for himself. And I would say, yeah, I would agree with you, Mariah, certainly curricular questions, curriculum subcommittee would be happy to go. I will just say, related to the grant, at least for this year, from my end on the high school end, we're working with a DESE approved curriculum, so the Facing History and Ourselves. So when we sort of have questions about how are we vetting them, when we use, typically what we do is the grant is approved through the state, and the state sort of says these are our approved vendors. So there isn't there's that formal process, the state process. And we also make our own curricular materials, as we do for our own classes. So there's a part of the grant too that is, at least for my stuff, the Holocaust related genocide things are vetted essentially, I guess, through the state by approving that curriculum at the state level. But the things that are going to be made by the teachers will go through the same process we go with all of our curricular things. So it's really teachers working with me. And then, of course, just to be clear, any parent can, of course, request, or school committee member could request materials, I presume. So certainly if that request came through, I'd be happy to show a curriculum we're making. So I guess that's the short answer, but of course we could get really in depth, which might then veer into curriculum. And I want to give Greg a chance to talk about whether he's received these requests.
Let me just make
Mariah,
clear one thing.
can I-
Prior year requests were, I think went to Jody, and Robin, I think received them this year. So I don't know that they've gone to you. So yeah, anyway, sorry to interrupt. And Donna, did you want to respond really quickly?
I
want to make sure we don't go. Yeah, go ahead.
I don't want to, I know that these conversations would be better served in curriculum, and my hope is that at some point they will come to curriculum. I had made a version of this request to curriculum earlier in the year. Jen, I want to remind you that we're instructed not to contact staff directly, so that's why you didn't receive my email.
Greg, do you have anything a burning need to add anything, or has Jen covered it?
No, I think Jen's covered it. I would just say part of one question that Donna mentioned around, because I think I may have found these questions very, very last minute here, is around the term equitable. And in both grants, I think we use the term equitable in terms of creating equitable access to learning experiences for all students across the public schools of Brookline. So one of the things that I've made a point to do is try to create some common experiences, right? So that everyone is, the students that go to Lincoln School, Baker School, Pierce School, are getting access to high quality instructional materials and instruction. So that's what we're talking about in terms of both the civic teaching, learning, and genocide education, is to create experiences that all students have access to. And that's what we're looking at in terms of equitable access.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Porter, because that's how I'll always think of you. I appreciate that. And then I'll just say, specifically on the civics education, I do have some concerns about Project Zero, and I'm happy to take those offline if anyone's interested.
Thank you, Donna.
Mariah, can I just mention that we now have a quorum of school committee as well as subcommittee present?
Thank you. So
Okay.
for the school committee members who were present before, before we had the quorum, now you are fully liberated to join the meeting. Okay, we're gonna take a vote.
I'm just
I mean,
gonna throw a wrinkle, Mariah, because I'm gonna drop off in about 10 minutes.
well, let's take that wrinkle when we get there. Okay, so we're gonna take the two votes separately for the civics education. How do you vote, Donna?
I vote no.
Sarah?
Yes.
And I vote yes for the genocide education grant. Donna?
No.
Sarah?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Thank you, Jen and Greg, for coming, and I think you are all set to go.
Thank you.
Am I permitted to ask a question? Because this
Yeah.
relates to, this will take 2 seconds, which is just, now we have approval to go to, I think that's what just happened. Am I wrong? To apply is what I'm hearing. Is that right or
Yes.
not? Okay.
Yes. Susan, does it have to go to full committee in the consent agenda? I'm sorry, Jen, this is.
Yeah, just because we have to work on the grant, and I just want to know, are we setting forth working on the grant or not? You know, finishing up all of our, tying up our loose ends.
Yeah, so we're voting tonight to give you permission to apply for the grant.
Mm-hmm.
If we're awarded the grant, then it goes on the consent agenda to the school committee, unless there's some kind of a significant change to the grant as approved by the subcommittee tonight.
Thanks.
It's
So
in it.
yes,
Okay.
go ahead
Got it.
and
So
go
we'll be
ahead and apply.
back. We'll be
Yeah.
back once we get the actual grant. Okay.
Consent agenda, though. It's a consent agenda item.
And
So,
it's a full committee for that,
Yeah.
yeah.
All right. Thank you.
yep. We're gonna skip around again, trying to balance all the different time commitments. We're gonna jump to the item that is at the very end, 3H, which is discussion of facility rentals and leases. And this ties to some conversations that school committee and ERSC and others have had about the use of facilities by third parties and other questions. And I thought it might be helpful, although we don't have, we're not going to be able to resolve the facilities rentals question this year. It might be helpful to get some of the questions written down and sort of articulated publicly so that we can all use that, or those of us who are on the committee next year, which I will not be, can use that as a jumping off point to continue the conversation. So I'm going to pull up a slide that I just put together to talk through this, if I can find it. But in the meantime, sorry, I'm trying to pull it up and I can't seem to find my Chrome. Okay, I think this is it. Can you see the slide?
Not yet, but there it is.
Okay. So I tried to write down some topics here, sort of things that were on people's mind, but I'd like this to be crowdsourced among school committee and staff. I know, Carolyn, this is something that you're interested in, so I'm hoping you can take a look at this, especially making sure that we're covering the things that are there. Sarah, I see your hand is up, so why don't you go ahead?
Thank you. So really happy to see calculating true cost of rental. And I just wanted to ask if, when you put that down, you intend to be looking at the issue that we've had a couple of times of the people who are in the building at the time that the building is being used, being interrupted frequently, to help with that. So is there a sense that we are going to try to fold into the true cost a person to be there after hours? Or are we going to continue to rely on staff for responding to rental issues?
I'm going to call this after hours operations,
Thank you.
how it's supported. Does
Thank
that
you.
make sense, as rather
Yep.
than calling it as a cost of rentals? Okay. how it works and is paid for. I'm going to be a little bit more granular.
I like that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Because that's also something that's been and that's tied to, in my mind, that was under the facility policy as well, of like who is doing that. But you're right, it really needs to be talked about. Donna, go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to thank Sarah for raising that, because I do think it's an important issue that we need to address, and I'm glad to see it included on the list now.
So that for anyone who can't read, it was facility policy that there is a current section K, which talks about some of these things. The first draft went to policy. We talked about it, was it yesterday? Yesterday was policy, right? It hasn't been docketed a second time. That was a miscommunication about what was supposed to happen next, but there is section K there linked. That's the current policy. Then calculating the true costs of rental, which, as I mentioned, is something that PSB has been interested in for a long time. Also ERSC, after hours operations that you just alluded to, Sarah, how it works and it's paid for. Leasing of spaces. So like if we have third-party users, when do we need to have leases and when do they need to be bid publicly? And that's the 30B chapter 16. But that also has a bottom threshold. But again, we should have, I think in general, we want to make sure we have leases for people, even if they are a low cost lease or a no cost lease, just to be very clear on rights and responsibilities. And then some of the office space occupants that have come up recently, and I'm just listing BEF, Innovation Fund, Steps to Success. I understood historically they've had space at no cost. That doesn't mean they can't have a lease, right? I think that that's a separate question. And then BEU has space access in the contract. There may be others. This was just the first couple of places or occupants that came up. Sarah, I see your hand, and then Helen, who is our wonderful historical memory, can also chime in. Go ahead, Sarah.
So I really enjoyed reading the Expenditures and Revenues Study Committee when they addressed this topic. It seemed to be really good. And I just don't know in terms of process, is there an opportunity to study this, and does that cost money? And what would be next steps, next fall, if this was something that we were going to pursue?
Can you repeat that again? Sorry, what would
Yeah.
be? Go ahead.
I really think that a study of the facilities is a great idea, a study of how we go about charging people for the facilities use. And I really appreciated the way that the Expenditures and Revenue Study Committee went into depth in the section about this. And so I was wondering if a study, not a study, but if looking into this is possible, is it something that costs us something? And if we do want to do it, what would be the next step to get there?
Susan, I'm going to ask you to answer that, if you might. Oh, you disappeared.
You-
Oh, there you are.
sorry.
Okay.
Here I am. I'm sorry. What specifically would you like me to respond to, Maria?
For
The
us,
question of whether a study of the facility, like rental costs, the true costs of that, whether it will cost us money to do this, was my first understanding. And then just generally whether it's possible, your thoughts on the timing of this for next year.
I think a lot of the information we would have to get from the town, right, on utility costs, for example, if that's a component of it. Cleaning and maintenance are usually a component. In my experience, having gone down this road before in a prior life, is that it can get very kind of involved and complex when trying to calculate the costs. Important to make sure you document what the methodologies are, because there's multiple ways you can approach that. But can it be done? Yes, it can be done. It would have to be done collaboratively with the town, because they hold a lot of the data on their side, like maintenance and repair and such. We don't have access to that. We don't have, other than on a very high level. So can it be done? It can. And a working group to really take a deep dive into all of this is, in my view, incredibly important. for a lot of
Um,
reasons, but I'll make other comments, when
The,
it's my
the
turn.
budget also, yes, when it's your turn, the budget also talked about doing this in FY 27. So I think there is a plan, but as Susan said, it's really complicated. Okay, next up was Helen, then Bella, then Carolyn, then Susan. Go
Sorry,
ahead, Helen.
I'm a committee member. Can I not go before a member of the public?
I called on Helen before you raised your hand. I'm just gonna keep going. I promise you'll get your turn, but she had,
Okay,
I called on
well,
her.
normally committee members go before members of the public.
Helen, go ahead, then Bella, then Carolyn, then Susan.
Unmute. Oh, I cannot unmute. I can wait for Carolyn. It's fine. Yeah.
Okay, well, we'll put you after at the bottom of the queue then, Bella, and then it'll go to Carolyn.
Fine.
Bella, are you there? Because you're on mute and we can't see you.
Let me walk down, see if
Uh-oh.
she's having trouble.
Bella's calling me. Hang on.
Yeah.
Hi.
The host, you disabled my video and audio, it says.
Oh,
Oh.
okay. I'll tell Betsy. Betsy, it says that she's disabled her audio and video.
That I've disabled her audio and video?
It said the host did. Carolyn, why don't you go ahead and when Bella gets queued back up, we'll get to you. We'll
Okay,
go back to her.
thanks. And thanks, Helen. I just want to sort of put I have talked about this a few times in emails, but not that went to everybody. So I just want to give a kind of outline of my concern and interest here. And it's pretty consistent with the ENRSC schools subcommittee executive summary recommendation number 7, which says we should be entered into leases with organizations that are using school building space between the hours of 7 a.m. and 5:30 p.m. So as shown on here, we know that includes the BEF at Baldwin, the Innovation Fund, and Steps to Success at the high school. And in conversations I've had with people, I know there's this notion that these are partner organizations. They're actually not. I mean, maybe in theory, but we have a definition of partner organizations in our policy. Those are after school programs. You could make the argument that Steps is an after school program, but they're administering the program. Their office space is in the high school. And the BEF has only been at Baldwin since 2024. They paid rent forever. All of these organizations are 501c3s. Their tax records are public. You know, before I started talking to people about this, I looked, as one can easily do, on the AG's website. These are very fiscally healthy organizations, healthier than we are, all with assets in securities between the hundreds of thousands and millions of dollars. So I'm not too worried that by charging rent as we should be doing, that we would be hurting these organizations. According to what we were recently told, based on the square footage and a conservative estimate of what these spaces would be worth, we're looking at probably around $84,000–$85,000 a year. So I see a librarian or something else that we're cutting. I see us sort of correcting what's been described as practice with the materials fee program that hasn't been consistent with the policy, and that is impacting humans, teachers, and students. And so I just think it is really our responsibility, especially right now, when we are asking the taxpayers to fund an override, to be doing everything we can to make sure that revenue that's available to us, that we take steps and show the public and do for ourselves to put money in our budget to collect that revenue. So, and again, I was glad to see it in the ENRSC report because I don't think I'm crazy. This is something I think we really need to button up with some urgency. And I think that pretty much covers my my kind of outline of concerns about it.
Thanks, Carolyn. Before we go back to Bella and then Susan, is there anything that you like, does this slide capture everything? Or is there anything missing from this slide that you would like to be sort of put on the agenda for exploration as we go? And you don't have to answer on the spot now if you're not ready.
No, that's okay. Thank you for asking. I guess ideally, number 5, like I wouldn't really call it status of. I would love to call it like moving forward with executing leases. I don't see why we wouldn't. So that would be my only, but thanks for asking.
Let me move this whole one as a sub of this so that it's all under leasing of spaces. So.
Thanks, Mariah.
Yep. Bella, go ahead.
So I would actually like us to step back. When I've been asked specific questions about how different entities came to use space in school-owned buildings, as I've tried to research and figure out how those situations got to be, it was clear there was a lot of there's just confusion and around how some entities got to be in buildings or not. So I actually would like to, so I'm interested in that however we treat any entity and how they use the space in the building, whether they're being charged or not, that we make sure we're doing it fairly. So I actually would like to step back because I look at that list and in my research, I've already identified also big as well as a user of space. You know, and there are town meeting is a use of space. The rec department is a use of space. I would feel more comfortable if we just step back and said, okay, who is using
But I don't think
space?
town meeting and rec are office space. That list is office spaces, right? But I think big does actually have office.
But it's rec, it's use of space.
No, it's during school hours, office space, 7 a.m. to 5.
Well, this whole list though is about
I'm
both
asking
things.
for a bigger look.
Yeah.
Because I
Okay.
really feel it would be better to have greater transparency and I think everyone would feel better to just know like who else is using space in the building, whether it's during school hours, after school hours, weekends, summer only. It would just be better if we just looked at it all and then everyone could see, okay, this is how these decisions are made. And that's also, I would like to broaden that part. And then how the school committee wants to decide who gets charged or not, that should be in a public discussion and then determine. Anyway, and I think it could mean a look at what does a partner mean or not. I know there's a definition that exists in a policy, but I think that should be something that the committee could talk about.
I did put that under 2B, Bella, because I think that the people are using partner. There's the one that's in the policy that Carolyn is referring to accurately as there, but I think people have also been using it other ways and it's not in the policy, but it does have
right. And that's what I've determined, like that's what I've learned in the research. And so I just think it all can be cleaned up better. Absolutely. So that everyone knows how it works. And but yes, I think in practice people have come to interpret that to mean differently. And I just think it would be better if we could talk about it.
Agreed. Susan and then Donna, and then I want to wrap this one up because again, this is just to air the list of things. So go ahead, Susan. Oh, and Helen, I'm sorry, Helen, I forgot about you, but yes.
I was just going to remind you about Helen. Okay.
I'm sorry. Okay, go ahead, Susan.
Okay, just to add a couple, I was going to mention big, but Bella mentioned that. Another piece of this is not explicitly stated here, but I want it to be, and that is after hours supervision.
It is like there, after hours operations. It's there.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Supervision, I want it specifically spelled out. it's the roles and responsibilities of the parties, like what is PSB versus what is the expectation of the user group. So I just want to call that out. And then there's the procedures that go along with that. So I see operations in a couple of different layers, but I think that piece is been a pain point, and we need to work through that. Another part to me is rental versus lease, and that gets to the definitions. In fact, it's important to be able to clarify when leases apply versus when it's use of facilities or rentals. Typically, the nomenclature of rentals means after hours or after school use, and leases are typically, as previously stated, during the school day. But there's also different protocols that you follow depending on which how you categorize that. So I think it'll be important to be able to, be explicit about that. To Bella's point, it's very confusing. And it shouldn't be. I mean, this should be pretty straightforward. And then the rules of engagement can be applied in a consistent manner. Another component of it is, and the first step of leasing is that you have to identify the space that's available. That's like step one. So as you're looking at leasing of space, you can't lease a space that you haven't determined is surplus, so to speak. So I just want to make sure that component is on the list of things to take a peek at when you're going about this. And then even more important is that there's competing priorities, and this has caused an awful lot of confusion internally. And so what do I mean? You have it's not just leases, you also have memorandums of agreement with various parties, including one that is in front of us, which is the rec department use. And what I find is some of the components of that MOA might be in direct conflict with other priorities. In other words, if the rec department has first priority after PSB, then there might not be any space to rent to anybody after school hours, right? I'm just using this as an example. And so if that's true, if that is what everybody agrees to, that the rec department and the town should have the right to use our facilities after PSB has, fully scheduled all of the school activities, then there may not be opportunity in the same way it is now for other after-school programming to use the facilities. And this has been an internal conversation around the rec department lease, that it will have an impact on a rental income. So to Carolyn's point, if we're going to lose after-school revenue from current users, then the leasing of surplus space may be a way to moderate the impact of that. But again, there are two competing priorities that I hear within the community. And one is that we should have access to our facilities for community organizations or town organizations. And also the idea that we have these assets that we can leverage. So they rub up against each other in many ways. And I think we got to work through that. So those were the additions I had to thought would be important to put on that list.
Thank you, Donna, and then Helen. Poor Helen, I'm sorry. You gave up your spot and now you're at the end.
No, actually, Helen can go ahead of me. That's totally
Okay,
fine.
go for it, Helen. Thank you, Donna.
You're
You're
muted.
on mute, Helen.
Here we go. To add to your list, there's two others. There's the music school. And
Although they pay for space, I thought. No, oh no, not in
No,
the
not always.
right. Okay, they pay in the buildings, but not in their building. Is that correct?
Yes, they pay
Okay.
when they use our rental spaces, but they do not pay for their space. They're supposed to do a certain amount of work, and that was the way it was formulated, but that's not necessarily the way you might want to continue. And the extended days.
They pay.
They
But not necessarily
pay,
for their offices, right? Is that what you're referring
so
to?
the other piece that you should include, there's a difference between leasing and licensing. And I don't know exactly the legal difference, but if you lease it, you have to put it out to bid. So for instance, the YMCA could come in and bid on extended day, you know, and come in cheaper or whatever. And, you know, and that's been going for 40 years now. I'm not sure you want to change that, but you can license it. And license to the other entities too. So that it's, because, I mean, the one thing that I hear what you're saying, Carolyn, in terms of trying to get revenue, but sometimes, you know, it's not, all of these, almost all of the entities that you're talking about, their sole purpose is to get back to Brookline.
Helen, I'm not going to do a whole conversation about this.
Okay.
This is for the future. We're just identifying
I'm
the
done.
issues. We're not
I'm
debating
done.
the
Thank
merit.
you.
Yes. The only other thing I want to mention is that the leases is independent of, I'm just going to write a note here, independent, if I can figure out how to write independent of lease cost. Because I do think like leasing allows us to clarify, as what you were saying, Susan, allows us to have a formal relationship. That's something that, should something go wrong, you really want to have that in place. And so I see a very important role in that for liability insurance, et cetera, et cetera. Donna, you're the last word. Is Donna now not allowed to get off of mute? Because she doesn't have her camera on either.
She
Okay,
just
there
was
we go.
made. Oh, sorry.
That I'm back. Mariah, I didn't quite understand what you just said, but we can talk about it later. I can.
Okay.
And I'm wondering, I think I understand Bella's concern, but at the same time, is there an opportunity to do some sort of phased in approach? My biggest concern is around demonstrating to the public that we are taking the recommendations seriously, right? And identifying every possible dollar that we can. But secondly, I'm concerned about the no lease thing and liability that might, the liability that comes as a result of that.
Why don't we take it as an action item, if it's okay with you, Susan, for the next meeting to sort of pick through what could, like, to maybe triage some of this? Like in a month, of what actually could be done in the near term versus longer term. Is that possible, or do you want to talk about it later? Okay.
Yeah. I don't see it, as Bella said, it's much more complex. I think if you're going to do it, you really need to do it right. It's quite all over the map right now. And even with, and everything's nuanced, like even Brookline Music, I'm going to give an example really quick. If they paid for the piano that's in the room, then they don't pay rent. Where did that come from? So even if they're renting a room, they don't have to pay if they paid for the piano that's in it. I mean, each one of these has their own like special arrangement, and it's very difficult to administer when there isn't a framework that that we can apply in all situations. And I don't think that this is a Band-Aid. This is really something that needs to be done very thoughtfully and clearly, and then communicated, as Bella said, discussed in a public forum, and then communicated to the folks that are currently using our space so that they have time in order to adjust to whatever framework we create. It just isn't a.
But I'm going to push back a little bit against that, Susan, because you're talking about money. And I think that it should be a priority, even if our initial lease with these people is a zero cost, just like, hey, you need to hold insurance that covers you for liability. Like the same things we would ask someone if they were to rent a gym for an hour should apply to these people who are in the buildings 180, 200 days a year working, right? So
Yeah, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that to get a lease together that then applies to everybody right now, while we're negotiating 6 contracts and have an override.
I
is
wasn't suggesting that. What I said is
something
for
I
the
can do
next
in a
month, we
month.
could triage the things that are the most important, not do them. Readjust this list in terms of what could be done when. That's what I'm saying. Like, so if it's like by, the end of the fall, some of these things could be done or something like that. I completely appreciate
yeah.
what you're saying.
Yeah,
Bella,
you get the last word.
Yes, yes. I'm with Susan. If we do it, I want to do it right. And also, when people ask me questions with great earnestness, I try to find the answers. And I was like, whoa, so we should do this right. And when you shifted a plan for moving forward, like how we would resolve this, I can do that. It's just doing quick leases in time for July 1. I'm hesitant about that because of what I've determined so far that what exists.
Okay, well,
Yeah.
we'll put at minimum, we have this list ready to hit the ground running for next steps when the team is ready for those.
Right. Thank you.
Thanks. And Bella, you need to step away, right, to go to the next,
I kind of wanted to hear the other part. And so
the
I
budget,
did
which
just
other part? There's so many other parts.
FY27 budget development, that part.
Okay, that's not gonna happen. The budget deliberations isn't gonna happen until the end now. We have a whole bunch of business to get through that we have to
Okay.
get done today, and then we'll come back to that
All
because
right.
that's going on the agenda for tomorrow night anyway for several
Okay.
hours.
So I'll just go to the high school then.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, so the next item on our agenda, we're gonna go back to the beginning again, is 2A. So this is review and approval of the 1-year lease extensions for Beep at Temple Emeth, 194 Grove Street, Brookline, and Temple Ojibwe Shalom, 1187 Beacon Street in Brookline. And there is a memo in the packet for this. Thank you, Betsy, for pulling it up. Susan, we got a request from Carol Levin for the breakdown of costs. Will you, is it possible that, is this going to full committee tomorrow? Betsy, do you know?
I'm sorry, Belle was asking me a question. What was that?
Oh, is this, is the full committee approval of the lease agreements for BEEP going to full committee tomorrow?
It's not, it's going on the 26th.
Okay. Is it possible, Susan, that like we have the table just breaking down like each lease separately and then the total at the
Yeah.
bottom for like a couple years back, which I think we have in the budget book. We just don't have the most recent year broken out.
yeah, we have it in our CIP documents. So, yeah, it's not a
But
problem.
the CIP doesn't have it broken out, I don't think, at least the one that's in the budget book, but I know
My
you have it.
backside thing does, yeah,
Yeah,
the
okay.
backside that feeds it does. So, yeah,
Perfect. So I'm gonna make a motion to approve, to recommend this to full school committee. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Sarah, how do you vote? Or if
Yes.
there's any more conversation from the subcommittee, I don't want to cut anyone off. You vote yes? Okay. Donna?
Yes.
Carolyn?
I'm not
Karen's
on the
not
Oh, sorry. Sorry about that. I was looking, it's Jesse I'm missing, right? That's who my other
That's right,
member is.
Jesse's
Okay,
on.
apologies. And I vote yes as well. And then the next item on the agenda is the renaming of Pierce School Gymnasium. Because of all the things on the agenda, we're going to move that to the next meeting. That will be presented by Bella at the next meeting. The next two items are the FY27 repair and maintenance budget and CIP conversation. I want to park those just to finish out some of the memos and the gifts, and then we'll come back to that and then the full budget. So the next one that is the contract extensions with Eastern Bus and Local Motion, which was on the same thing, on the same memo document. It's great that the rates are so favorable to us compared to the market, as you've documented. So thank you for that. And I'm going to make a motion for to support the renewals of the two Eastern Bus and Local Motion for 27. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Any
Wait.
conversation?
I need a minute to read it.
Sure.
You're afraid we can't do we can't do.
Sorry, Mariah, who's this from?
It's from Susan. If you just
Oh,
scroll
great.
up, yeah.
Okay, then I vote. Are we voting?
Yes, as soon as,
I-
yep,
I
go
vote
ahead, Donna.
yes.
Okay, Sarah?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. Sorry, both of those memos were from Susan. They were just combined into one. Both of the informations were combined into one memo. Okay, then the next item we're gonna go to is acceptance of gifts. We have 3 gifts. The first one is for $2,000 from Chris Dempsey et al. For a plaque at Pierce School to honor former staff member Billy Harris. The second one is $10,000 from an anonymous donor to support student financial assistance for BHS international travel. And the third one is $1,022.76 from the Ruff and Ridley PTO for the Discovering Justice Fall stipend. I'm actually going to defer the vote on the plaque so it can match the conversation about the naming. So we'll do the second two. Can I get a motion for acceptance?
So moved.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, Donna, how do you vote?
I vote yes with enormous gratitude to the donors.
Yes, thank you. Sarah, how do you vote?
Yes.
And I also vote yes, and thank you to the donors. And I just want to say that Donna and I were participants in the Discovering Justice mock trial in January or December. When
It
was
was
that? February?
so incredible.
It was really amazing and like an absolutely wonderful experience to be a mock juror and to see the students who had prepared so much. So I think it's an exciting connection to the gift that's in front of us. Okay, so then the next item on the agenda, thank you all for bearing with me as we fly through, is we're going to go, I think, to position, the new position report. Thank you. Betsy, do you mind making this a smidge bigger? Susan, do you want to walk us through the 3 in March that are the changes since the last time we saw this?
Sure. Yeah, a few more paras, which is typical this time of year. We don't usually have professional staff in general that are added this late in the year. So what you're seeing here is a request from OSS for 3 paras and an early childhood aid. So the early childhood aid is making a modification to our staffing. And we had a retirement of a teacher. And instead of replacing the teacher, we felt that we would be able to provide the level of services that are currently needed with an early childhood aid. That is funded from the revolving fund, but it also means that it's less money in the long run that'll come out of the revolving fund. The net cost is an annualized cost. It's not the amount of money we would save for this year, but in fact, the difference between the teacher's salary and the aide salary annualized. The other two
Can I
are
ask a question before you go on? So
Sure.
we had a mid-year teacher retirement is what you're saying, or this position?
Resignation, I'm sorry, not retirement. Had
Okay, a
retirement.
mid-year resignation?
Yeah.
Okay, and this is a gen ed teacher?
Yes.
Okay,
Indeed.
and the BEEP classroom doesn't need a gen ed teacher? The gen ed teacher can be replaced by an aide? I guess I'm confused at the staffing configuration in this.
Yeah, through some consolidations, and based on what the needs are right now, Margaret felt that this would be an appropriate shift to make at this time.
But how does the classroom not have a teacher? I don't understand how they go from.
It's not that through consolidations.
Well,
And
what does
where
that mean?
where students are and how many teachers are needed based on current enrollments, how many classrooms are therefore needed. And so adding a para to a classroom and not having to run 2 separate classrooms is my understanding of how this would be able to be accomplished.
So she's consolidating 2 BEEP classrooms into one?
Mm-hmm. And adding the aide instead of having two professional staff. That's my understanding. I can further clarify.
Is it possible to
get
get clarity on like how this is working? I just don't quite, yeah.
I mean,
how many students were in the
certainly it wouldn't
classrooms
be
that they could be
recommended if
consolidated?
it wasn't a prudent action to take, but I'm happy to provide more.
Well, also just like, is it a permanent consolidation?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Very good. I guess I was the only one. My questions are done on that one. It would be helpful
Okay.
to understand that.
Yeah,
And
I
then,
don't know what else I can say, but I'll
yeah,
see
if you can
see what
ask, that'd be
details.
helpful. And then go ahead with the other two.
Yeah, the other two are just, you know, special education paraprofessionals, one at Runkle and one at Hayes. One, we're funding, so, you know, using the last extra section, and the other one is a shift in what we need for paras. So we're eliminating an inclusion para, and we're introducing a specialized para. It doesn't involve elimination of staff. Rather, we had an open position as an inclusion para. We're sunsetting that, and we're adding a specialized para. So we call that reclassifying positions.
My only question on that is, there's a whole bunch of other places in this document where we swap out specialized program paras for inclusion paras and vice versa, like the top line in October. And there was another one, I think, somewhere. And I'm just curious, like, why this one has a net cost associated when some of the other ones don't have a net cost associated.
Just that because, good question, Mariah.
It's helpful to know there's a net cost, and I get it because there's a differential, an hourly differential. So it
Yeah,
just seems
and
like it
that's what
makes
it
sense
is.
to, if we're going to recognize it in one spot, to recognize it in the other spots too. That's
Yep,
all.
I agree.
Okay, Donna, go ahead.
Thank you. I was just gonna ask Susan if we've now sort of consumed the last of the extra sections. If there is a need going forward, how do you, what's our, on paper, what's our funding source for that?
So I would look to see if I have any breakage anywhere that I can access in order to address the need. I'm hopeful that at this late point in the game, we wouldn't have to add additional staffing, but I'll work with Karen and Robin should the occasion arise to figure out you know, what the funding source will be.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Susan, for walking us through that. The next thing we're going to go to is the building department budget. There's the operating budget and the CIP. The operating budget we discussed in, I think it was January, with Charlie Young and Charlie Simmons. And then last month, Jesse and I had an offline meeting with them, and we reported out to the subcommittee on some of that discussion, including the possibility of reallocating the funding for the vehicle that is in the budget for the building department into repair and maintenance instead. And then also we talked about the HVAC techs that Charlie has hired one for the town side this year successfully, and they are seeing salary savings that are estimated at 40,000 per person. And so we also talked about taking the savings from up to 2, because he's going to hire 2 HVAC techs to support PSB HVAC needs, the salary savings from those 2 positions. Charlie unfortunately couldn't join us tonight. Neither Charlie could join us due to prior conflicts, including advisory committee meetings tonight. But I wanted to put these, first off, I want to talk about the operating budget, because I think it's important that as we're getting relatively far into the year, that we have our recommendations for the operating budget for the PSB portion of the building department operating budget to be articulated. So I'm just going to pull up.
Do you need to share anything, Mariah?
I don't think so right now. I think I
Okay.
have it all in this slide. So this is just a refresher that Charlie had submitted a memo to the school committee, which you all received. I think, Betsy, it went to everyone, but school committee, the finance and capital committee discussed it. This was for 3.9 million plus the town allocation for Charlie is 3.6 million for next year, and the town allocation for this year was, I've seen it two different places, and they explained to us there's like a slight difference in the allocation, but it's around 3.54 million for the current year. So the consideration that we could make tonight is for Finance and Capital Subcommittee to recommend to the full committee to move that the 54,500 that's allocated for vehicle replacement be reallocated to a repair and maintenance budget. And just as a reminder, the town has already done this for several years for their budget. So they have been reallocating or pausing those expenses as well. And then I was a little more conservative. So I said move that 40,000, which is half of the projected $80,000 salary savings of hiring 2 HVAC techs, be reallocated from the salary line to the repair and maintenance budget. So these changes, if we were to vote these changes would take Charlie's allocation from the town for repair and maintenance from 3.633 million, that's the number you see here. If you add the 54,500 and the 40,000, it would take it to 3,727,585. So it doesn't bring him to the full amount he's requested of 3.94 million, but it does bring it substantially about a third of the way closer to the increase between the town allocation and his request. So I want to open that up for certainly subcommittee discussion if you have any concerns or questions about these motions that I'm proposing. Oh, and one thing I want to mention is just that these do not affect the PSB budget at all. This is just allocations within the PSB portion of the building department budget. Sarah, Donna, any questions or thoughts on this? No? Okay, I'm going to make a motion that I'm just going to actually combine these two motions into one for now, just for timing's sake. That we make these adjustments. And again, these have been discussed with Charlie Simmons and Charlie Young. They understand, you know, we're all balancing everything, and this was a suggestion. PSB has, this was a suggestion of how we could move ahead. So do I have a second?
Yes.
Okay. Donna, how do you vote?
I'm sorry, Mariah, can you clarify for me? Are we moving, which of those two bullets are we moving?
The whole thing. I'm combining them into one. So move that the 54,500 allocated be reallocated to the repair and maintenance, and the 40,000, which is half of the 80,000, be reallocated.
Okay, I vote.
Okay, Sarah, did you voted
I
yes?
vote
already?
yes.
Right. Okay, and I
No, I
vote
didn't
yes
yet.
as well. Oh, you didn't vote yes. Oh, you did vote yes. Okay.
I'm voting yes now.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so I will share this with Charlie. Then the next thing I want to go to is the CIP. Betsy, if you don't mind pulling up some of the documents that I sent earlier today. So the CIP is complicated, and I'm going to give a little bit of a history right now to the subcommittee. Anyone else who thinks I'm skipping anything that's important to add, please like jump in and catch me. So if you recall, 2 years ago, PSB put in a request and the town granted us more than 2 years worth of what we had requested. So for FY25, we got funds that were much larger than we had requested that were intended to be used for 25 and 26. There was a long conversation at the time about the allocation, the use of FY24 funds, and how that ended up changing between when it was originally presented and when the funds were used. And so there was a whole appropriations language set up around this money from 2 years ago, saying that the money can't be, the money can only be spent in different ways if school committee requests the select board and the select board approves it. So that's the backstory. In 25, about 1.3 million of this money was used. In 26, about 450,000 of it was used, and there is still about $1.3 million that is pending that has not been used yet. This year, for 27, PSB put in a request of about 1.25 million for deferred maintenance. And we got 500,000. So the old 1.3 plus the 500,000 is 1.8 million in deferred maintenance. And there was a school committee articulated list of about 1.25 that PSB staff had recommended. That's in the packet here. Yesterday, I received from Charlie Simmons another list of what he's proposing for summer appropriations. Summer work, which is different than the prior list we approved. And unfortunately, he couldn't be here tonight. The reason I'm articulating this at the committee is I think it's important that we all understand that, like, right now we don't have a clear sense of at least I don't have a clear sense, and Susan, I would love if you could comment on this in a minute, of what the agreed upon priority projects are for this summer for PSB buildings. That's what's been agreed to by buildings and PSB. What is that list? The list that you see on the screen right now is what Charlie provided to us yesterday. If you could scroll up a little bit, Betsy, just to show, this was the list we saw in October that had some pending things on it as well. Like you could see Charlie had made some notes in red of things that were new. And there's also notes there of things that are ongoing. And then this list is the one that school committee submitted, or PSB staff submitted after school committee approved it. This was in September as part of the CIP process. And this is where you'll see the 1.225 for FY27. So I tried to compare these three things earlier today when I got Charlie's list, and that's in the email above, Betsy, if you don't mind just scrolling up. Because I guess I'm just a little confused, like, go down a little bit. Like, that's the Baker list we had from ours. I just looked at Baker because it's the first building on all three lists and it's helpful. So that's the first table there was ours. But then if you look at what Charlie gave us a month later, he had all the things that were marked in yellow on our list as completed. He had them as new, like, projects to do in his list, which I was confused. And then if you scroll down a little bit, the one we got from him yesterday has now 4 other projects. So my question to Charlie earlier today, and I apologize for this long monologue, but my question to Charlie earlier today was basically like, where did the 4 come from? And just using the Baker example. And so if you don't mind scrolling up a little bit, Betsy, just so I can get to the top of this email, my questions were, was the spreadsheet that he sent yesterday a collaboration with PSB staff? Where did the new items come from? Are there deferred maintenance items in the list that we had approved that are removed? And if so, which and why? The wording of the FY25 appropriation that I alluded to earlier, it says that all of that earlier work needs to be complete before a reallocation can be requested. So is it all complete? And then just a question about the scale, because as I mentioned to you all earlier, last summer there was $450,000 worth of work done. The summer before was around 1.3 million. But this list that Charlie gave last night is 1.8 million. Which is a lot of work to be done in a summer. And so just asking if that was is that really going to be the work all done in one summer? Because we're supposed to be, or I should say, the PSB deferred maintenance plan is supposed to go to advisory next week for review, but school committee hasn't approved an updated allocation list. This list that you all just got today was the first time I think we've seen it. And Susan, I would love if you could just comment on, like, where PSB staff is on this versus the information we're getting from buildings.
Yes, thank you for asking, Mariah. The information Charlie sent is, I guess, hot off the press from him, but it's not something we've seen. I did, have a conversation with Joe to see if something had changed or there had been any kind of a conversation, among the staff internally. And then communicated, and he said, no, our priorities still remain as presented and approved by the school committee back in September. The only thing that has kind of cropped up since then, but I don't think it's really deferred maintenance. Actually, it wouldn't be deferred maintenance, is that we have a couple of classrooms that need some work done in order to be prepared to be like a RISE classroom or an LLC classroom that we need to use next year. But other than that, nothing has changed from our perspective, and our priorities remain as stated back in September.
Okay. So how would you suggest that we proceed? Hang on one second. How would you, Sarah, how would you suggest that we proceed, Susan? Given the advisory subcommittee presentation that I think is next Wednesday, it's a week from tonight. Is there going to be time for buildings and PSB to get together and sort of align the lists between now and then?
I mean, we certainly can reach out to Charlie and see if he'd, like to meet with us to talk about it. But yeah, I think from the school administration, and this isn't just Joe and I, but the school administration's perspective, the priorities, we've confirmed the priorities for the upcoming year. And so next step would be really, from my perspective, is that now that we have the information from Charlie, if in fact all the work was done that was in the original list of items, then we need to go back before the approve the list and make a formal request to the select board and notify the advisory committee of our interest in reallocating the remaining funds for these projects that we've identified. That would really be consistent with what the town meeting article directed us to do, should we want to reallocate funds for a particular purpose. And I did do that a year and a half ago, but what we heard back for feedback was that the board was not supportive until Charlie was clear that the projects that were in the original list were completed. So that's, I'm not sure how that squares with advisory committee, but I would say that in the past couple of years when I've gone before them, it's been based on our list.
Right.
Yeah. And then I'm certainly
wondering-
can speak to that, but
I'm wondering if one opportunity is to have Charlie focus on the 500,000 that actually is in the FY27 budget and present that. Like, again, you all need to meet, but like the advisory does not need to review the 25-26 funds. Their scope is the 27 funds of 500,000. So maybe that is the way is to separate out the reallocation from the plan for the 500,000, because that makes it tractable for next week I think possibly tractable for next week.
perhaps, but if we have another 500,000, then I think that we would look to see administratively what the school department feels is important.
Well,
use
that's what
those
I'm saying
funds
is
on.
you
Yeah.
all could focus on just how to scope the 500,000 and worry about the process for reallocation that can run in parallel separately.
Yeah.
Like advisory doesn't need to review 1.8 million. That's not the FY27 budget is the scope. But I hear what you're saying. It all sort of is, it's all one problem. It's all one issue.
Right.
Sarah, why don't you go ahead?
I know that you know that this wasn't in the packet, but I want you to also know that I didn't receive the email either. I'm comfortable with the
wasn't in the
conversation.
packet?
This information wasn't, we didn't have this prior to this evening.
Oh, I thought you did.
This
I'm pretty sure
afternoon.
Betsy
No.
posted it and sent it out.
I
Right,
thought I
Betsy?
read through everything.
It came to you
Okay.
relatively late, maybe at 3 or something, but am I right?
I'll go
Betsy,
take a
it got
look.
shared?
It was, but late, probably 3 or 3:15 maybe.
Okay.
And it's an incredibly dense amount of material. And as you can see, there's been a lot of back and forth and it's very detailed, but I did want you to have it in the packet because I think it's important that we all understand that that while advisory has scheduled this, there is still a lack of clarity around what actually the request is. And I think that's all I have to say about this, unless there's other questions about it. Susan, for next steps, I guess I will follow up and say to Charlie that we made the vote, and it would be really good if the two of you could connect, or you and Joe.
I'll reach out and send him an email in the morning and say that, we really need to meet ahead of the upcoming meeting with advisory committee.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I'm
Thank you.
happy to do that in the morning. Yep.
I'm concerned too that like,
I'll copy you.
that if the presentation in front of advisory differs from what school committee previously approved, then it will just be school committee out of the loop of what's being, like it's not process wise, it doesn't make sense, but let's see where you get to. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I totally, I mean, I'm just seeing it for myself.
Yeah.
As you're seeing it, so I'm shocked. But we'll pivot and try to get things back on track. Yeah.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Okay, our last item is budget deliberation. I believe we've covered everything else in the agenda. So this is open conversation for anything we want to discuss, keeping in mind, as I mentioned earlier, that we have budget deliberation on tomorrow's agenda, but this was requested for today as well, which I think is fine, and doubly noticed for participation by the full committee as well. So if anyone has anything they want to discuss, Donna, go ahead.
I want to just share with this group that I know senior leadership is doing an incredible amount of work trying to respond to all of our questions. I have some outstanding questions. I was able to connect with Robin on Monday, and I know she's pulling some of that together. And as the responses to our questions start to come in, I think it'll be a lot easier. Like for me, it'll be a lot easier to deliberate in sort of like in good faith, or feeling like I've done all of my due diligence when I have all the information. Then I need to make decisions. A lot of my questions at this point are around high school staffing and the 4+1 and some of that model, how those decisions are made, what criteria is used to make those decisions. It's not clear to me some of the 4+1, and I'm using primarily, Mariah, the chart that you provided to me like a while ago, which I think was one to E&R, but some of those assignments are, like, for lack of a better term, I call them academic, they're academic assignments, and then some are not directly academic. So I just want to understand how those decisions are made. I also really want to understand the staffing levels or the PARs, whether the district and senior leadership has had conversations about adjusting the student to teacher ratio given the financial constraints, that we're struggling with. So I would, once I have all of that, I'll be able to be a more active participant in the conversations. And I recognize that everyone's doing as much as they possibly can to provide as much information to us in a timely way as possible.
Do you have a sense from Robin that you are going to get the information that you would like by tomorrow?
I think some of it, it sounded like yes, some of it specifically about the 4+1s. There were other, and Susan, while you're here, I don't want to put you on the spot, but the other part was around whether there was a mechanism by which we can review the stipend dollars that have either been spent or encumbered for FY26, because I'm curious, while I have the information on the rates, right, and I have some in that memo that we do of the 9 non-aligned stipend compensation, I'm not sure that I have a handle on where we're spending, on what we're actually spending per category. I think that we've talked about that a little. And then the other piece was, I had some questions about well, I think I'm going to stop there.
Can I ask a clarifying question?
Yeah.
Just so that, again, I don't like a hit and a miss, but so there's what we call extra compensation, and it's not all stipends. Is it fair to say that what you're looking for is an accounting of like what we budgeted for extra compensation? Because sometimes it's hourly, it's not a stipend. In other words, workshop rates and stuff like that. So I can share like information about, okay, this is how much we had for extra compensation, because that's the account category we track on. Here's the budget, and this is what we've spent to date. It's not fully spent because, of course, we're just starting the spring season, so a lot of those expenses don't hit the books until later But is that what you're looking for? Like just a budget to actual?
So are you,
for the-
saying that extra compensation is the account code, or I don't know what the right language
Yeah.
is, the account code through which stipends will pass? Is that?
Yeah,
Okay.
and it includes all of that. So we call
And
all
is
of
there
it. It's not
any,
just
is
like
there,
a stipend, yeah.
okay, is there detail in that? Like, so does it tie back to? Does it
It's
tie
high
back to?
level.
Oh,
It's
okay.
just high level.
Mhm.
Yeah, it doesn't, it's not like, we don't budget like, I can say we budget this amount and this is what it's for, but I don't budget and track by specific transaction.
Okay, can I ask another question? Are the stipend amounts? Stipends have to be work that stipends or extra compensation is work that happens outside of the workday. Is that an accurate
Outside of their
representation?
outside of their contract, yeah. It's
Okay,
outside of the contract, yeah. Not
Okay.
necessarily always, but I mean, the work might be done all kinds of different times, you know what I mean? But it's, so teachers are hired to do their primary role.
Mhm.
And if they coach or they do advising or they attend a workshop or something like that, that's outside of their regular work, then that's what they get paid extra compensation for.
Okay, so let me go back. I will go back and think about it.
Maybe
I
you and I
appreciate
can
the
talk.
question. Yeah.
I just want to make sure because I don't, it's the things
Can I
that are
ask the question
recorded.
a little differently?
Yeah.
Oh, I love when you do this, Mariah.
Because I'm also really curious about this. So, because there was an evolution of basically, I'll say non-salary. At one point, Mary Ellen told me she basically had like a huge lump fund that she used for both sub pay and stipends. It was like everything outside of
Right.
like standard salary was like this one amorphous blob of money, not differentiated. And you've done a whole bunch of work to really get at the basis, like a true value of
Yes.
where, like, when we ask for X for this, why are we asking for X and not X plus 10,000 or X minus 100,000 or whatever? So when you did that work, like what were the categories? What does stipends add up to? And what were the subcategories? And I'll give one example. Like you mentioned, like athletic coaching stipends. I think you adjusted at the end of February by, I can't remember how much, 100,000 or something, because you said they haven't been spending it. So you must know a budget of you have a budget for athletic coaching stipends. So what is the
Yeah.
under stipends, what's the big buckets in their value that you've budgeted rather
Yeah.
than actuals, and we don't need to know like baseball
Yeah.
versus but just like big chunks. What is the next level
Yeah.
down?
Yeah, and it's not just stipends, it's extra comp, and that's what I'm just trying to clarify. Because
Yeah.
you
No,
know,
I know, but right,
but I have it by cost center, so I can say and athletics just happens to be a subcategory, but in general, it's not. It's just only at the high school because
yeah,
high school is the only one that has athletics, so I do track, but it's extra comp. So some people might be paid hourly for certain activities, like your timekeepers and things like that, right? And so what I can give you is I can say athletics was budgeted at this and this is what we spent. I can show what is spent for the last 3 years, which is really what I look at. And then I a lot of times I compare that to what we have in the budget now, if there's a reason for any adjustment, blah, blah, blah. But I can do that. Also, I broke out substitutes like Mary Ellen. Everybody had everything in big chunks. And I did try to deconstruct some of that so that because sub-trending, it looks very different than stipends and extra comp. So I did subdivide those two sections. I just want to be clear because I can give you what budget is to actual, but when people say stipends, I want to make sure that what I'm giving you, I don't have stipends as a separate account. I have extra comp. All right, which
yes.
includes those things. But I can say athletics, I can say by school what extra comp is in each school, and I can say what extra comp is at the district level. I can say this is what we budgeted and this is what we spend. I can with
Can you
ease,
separate out workshop rate versus stipends?
not
by
without
school?
going through every single transaction.
Okay, got it. Because I think it's just helpful, like, to understand. Well, I guess my question is then, how did you know what to budget for workshop rate for a school? Do you assume, like, 3 hours per teacher per, I don't like, is that sort of the kind of calc you do or?
No, I work with the principals, and if it's workshop at the principals, because workshops used for a lot of different things.
Yeah,
It's really the rate that's used for after-school work. So the principals would sit down with me when we're building the budget, and they say, well, I need to do some work with my teachers in the summertime in the middle school because of X, Y, and Z. We have a struggle, we have a SIP issue, blah, blah, blah. And so we put the workshop rate in, we estimate the number of hours for that particular thing, and that's what the extra comp is. But all those are folded in. I don't track by transaction. I
Okay.
just don't.
okay.
But
Sorry, Donna, I
but I
was
can say
hoping
by
that
the
maybe there'd
bigger
be big
category.
buckets.
Yeah, so it's not, it's may seem random like that, but it's really connected to specific types of activities. But yeah. It
So how
doesn't,
does that work relate back to that, the creation of that memo when we're doing the rates, right? Like some of the rate, how do you, let me see if I can phrase the question in a way that makes sense outside of my head, but how would we do analysis to determine the rates using the actual, either the actual budget numbers or the actual, the budgeted versus when we're creating that memo, how would actual data from the budget feed that memo? Like,
I budget by the category, like in that case. So let's say it's ESY. I don't, so this is what I would do. Let's say you increase the total amount of compensation by 10%. I would go at what we spent last year times 10% equals what the budget is. I don't go line by line, transaction by transaction, and stipend by stipend. I look at it as a bucket, not as each individual component.
okay.
So that's why when you guys keep asking, I don't track that. I mean, I would have to download every single hire. Who did we hire? When? I just don't. It's just not the way it's done. So I can give you
That's
what
okay.
I have and how I
Yeah.
track it, and I can explain how I use it and how I go about budgeting, how I monitor it. I mean, I can tell you all of that. But
Yeah,
it
and I
isn't the
can
way you're
certainly go,
asking for
yeah,
it.
I can certainly
Yeah.
go back at my notes and look at specifically what I was, what I was asking. I'm wondering too, if you have any information to add to the conversation about, at some point at the high school, there were some of the items that are now under +1s were stipend dollars, or according to Hal Mason, and they were stipend, and then they shifted over to +1. I wonder if you have any insight into that transition.
I don't.
Okay.
I don't. All of that's managed by the high school.
Okay.
And so I can tell you how much we've spent on stipends, like I said.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I don't get into that granular level of
Right.
data about how they're assigned or what they're for or whatever. I, certainly make sure that the amount that we're paying people is correct according to the contract or what you approve.
Right.
Check and payroll for that, but not in terms of assignments or the wherefore and why.
Okay.
I don't have that.
Thank you, Susan. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Susan, was the last week's FAQ the last FAQ, or are there more, like, are there still a couple, is there any pending?
There's, I got a couple more
I mean, I'm hearing from
questions
Donna,
there.
there's some pending, so I guess I'm wondering, will we
Oh,
be
she
getting
said
another?
follow-up, yeah, on the 4+1 again. 4+1 isn't something out of my office. I don't have data on that, so I
I
can't.
know, but you've been at least one
Yeah,
of the
yeah, we
people
take the
putting together the
information as we get
FAQ.
it and we
Yeah.
put them together. I know that Robin had a conversation with Donna, and my understanding is that they're actively working on getting the response. I think Carolyn sent in a couple today. And so the other thing too is that sometimes the questions are budget and sometimes the questions are like policy. And those, so those become more challenging. And so at this point, a lot of these are coming into like policy decisions or or why are we doing this, but it doesn't have anything to do with like the budget per se. Understand people are trying to process and understand and all of that, and it helps them to understand the budget, but there's some data yeah, that we have to curate. And of course, you've got new administrators in some of these other roles. And so they're desperately trying to get up to speed on these things too, so we can give you as accurate and clear answers as we possibly can. So there's not that many. Carolyn, I did see, she sent something in today, and I think Donna had a few, but other than that, there aren't any other, there's not, we've answered everything that's come our way, other than the last few that we've received.
And those are always put into email in addition to being posted on Budget Central.
Yeah, we send them out to you as a school committee, and then I put it on Budget Central so that in case somebody's doesn't have their email or whatever, you're offline someplace, you have a place a landing page to find information. So
Great, thank you.
Yep.
Carolyn?
Thanks. Sorry, I'm walking out the door and heard my name. So thanks, Susan, and I only had one ear on that. I think I said in my email today, and also to Bella, and I know we have a school committee meeting tomorrow where I think we'll have a lot of conversation. And this is not directed at you, Susan, but I'm just going to restate my hope is that as we deliberate the budget, I appreciate the opportunity to send in questions and get answers in writing. That's one thing. I really also hope for like nuanced and substantive dialogue. And again, I'm not directing this at you, Susan, but for example, if there are questions about staffing structure at the high school and the answer is only Hal and Anthony know, then hopefully there's an opportunity to just kind of have conversation with the people who do hold the information at some point. So just throwing that out there as a hope. Thank you.
Okay. We're at 6:30.
Wow. So punctual, this meeting. It's impressive.
I think we may be at the end of our deliberation for tonight, knowing that we are coming back to this tomorrow night. And there is a whole series of meetings with advisory committee over the next week. Oh, Susan, go ahead.
Yeah, just, it would be helpful. I'm not saying I can, but I think it would be helpful for tomorrow night if there are certain things. I mean, we'll do our best to get as many of the answers done in the FAQ and send those out. That's a priority tomorrow. Are there any specific topics for tomorrow night or any other way that I can provide any?
I think you heard from Carolyn just now, it's going to be really helpful to have Hal or Anthony there. And to the extent that, a K-8 principal might be able to attend to represent any questions that come that way, that might be helpful as well. And obviously you and Karen and Robin.
Yep.
I'm trying to think if there's any other, and obviously Bella, of course. But I think I agree and appreciate her point that if this is our big deliberation meeting, which has been scheduled for the same day that we have to have the vote, if we're going to comply with the timing that has been laid out that you need, then I think it's really important that people don't get their questions deferred to because someone's not there to answer them.
Yeah, but most of the questions, what I was really trying to get is a sense of the topic. So 4+1, I understand that. I was just wondering if tonight we talked a bit about leases and rental. I don't know that there's nobody else that can answer that any deeper than what we've already shared. But is there anything else?
And I think, Susan, that I think what people are saying is that the FAQ format is helpful, but when we never get the chance to actually have back and forth dialogue about the answers, it's not necessarily satisfying.
No,
right?
I agree with you.
I would expect that everything and anything is on the table, so to speak, not just those topics.
Yeah. No,
Can I ask
just
a-
thought I
so-
would ask, and I don't disagree, because everything is nuanced. And when you are the writer of the question, you have a certain perspective and the thought process that went into that. And then me as the reader, or who else is reading it, is going to have a different perspective.
Yeah.
And without the dialogue, that's why I keep saying, let me be clear. I want to understand. I don't want to have a miss here. And I want to make sure that you get whatever you're hoping to or that you need to out of our meeting tomorrow. So nothing in particular. I know the 4+1. I just didn't know if there was something else that was on anybody's mind tonight in particular that we could help with in any other way. But it doesn't sound like it. So thank you for allowing me to ask the question.
Thanks.
And can you both, or just clarify for me? I know we have a school committee meeting tomorrow, but I thought I had down on my calendar that the 26th, which is a week from Thursday, is the school committee budget hearing. Do you know, is that no? Okay, maybe that's
Hmm.
old.
Yeah,
No, the
that's
budget hearing,
February 12th or something, or 14th. It was a while ago, 12th.
but what you might have, and I don't know if this is what you're thinking, the select board has the public hearing on the budget, not ours, but the bigger, the town budget on the 24th. Could that be what?
No, I don't
Maybe you're
know what I was doing. It's
I
probably, who knows?
sent out an email, Donna, yesterday with the key dates coming up for both select board and advisory. So that might be helpful too, to just double check.
I'll
that.
take a look. I think
Yeah.
I had put things in my calendar like 6 months ago and never
Fair.
updated it. But I'm relieved to know that we don't have a meeting next Thursday then. Is that accurate?
I don't know.
Okay, I'll look.
We do have a
I'm
meeting
like,
on,
what,
I
a
don't
free
know.
night? Okay.
Betsy,
Yay.
do we?
we
have
do
a
have a
meeting
meeting on the 26th. So we have
Okay.
2 meetings a month, and that would have been
Oh,
the 5th,
wah,
but we
wah.
moved it to the 4th and the 26th. And then the last couple of years, we've added a third meeting, which is tomorrow night's, just on the budget, because it became apparent we needed more time just to focus on that. So tomorrow night's agenda, you'll see, is really just the budget and then the fiscal policy.
Thank you.
Betsy.
Can I throw out one more date that I think is important for everybody to have on the radar, is that the override vote, like before the town, is on the 5th of May. Now, everybody here might know that, but I didn't until a couple days ago. I didn't realize that. But if that's not on anyone else's radar, I think it's important to add to Mariah's list of dates that are important, that are in front of us. I didn't
Sounds
think
good.
that was in that, in your.
Yeah. No,
in
it
your
wasn't.
list.
I was just select board and advisory committee dates because we're expected to go to meetings and present often.
Yeah.
So I wanted to make sure we knew what was on our dance card.
What's in front,
upcoming.
right.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
And I had.
Yeah, but you're right. You're right, Susan, that we all have that one memorized. Like,
Yeah,
we all know that
okay.
one.
Yes.
Okay, well, we missed our 6:30 perfect ending, but I appreciate the conversation of this little bit. We got close. So thank
Thank
you
you
all,
so
and we'll
much.
see you tomorrow.
Thank you, Susan.
Yep, have a good night.
Good
Thank
night.
you. Good night.